Now I just wanted to kind of go over this because this is something that you will be using a lot throughout C++, and I'm not going to be able to show you every string function obviously because that would be a whole video series, but I will show you the ones that you'll probably find yourself using quite a bit. And all a string function is, remember when I told you at the beginning of this course that string wasn't really a data type but was a class? Well, without diving too much into classes, what a class is basically is it's an object that you can create an object of the class, and that object will have specific functions. Well, without, you might not be able to wrap your head around that just yet. I want to kind of show you what I mean. Each time you create a variable of type string, for instance, name equals Zach, this variable has several functions built into it because it is type string that we can use. For instance, we can say, name dot size, and that will return the size of the variable name. So if we say cout name dot size, when we run that, it'll print out the size of name, which was 4 characters. At that same token, there's another function called name.length, which will do the exact same thing. It'll print out 4. So like I said, there's several string functions that you can use, and if you look through, all you have to do is type in name dot, and all these functions pop up that you can see. And if you just play around with them, you can kind of see what they do. For instance, let's just use find. We'll use .find, and we'll search for C. And I believe if we see out that, if it runs, it'll return 2, because that's the position of C in the string. Because remember, 0, 1, 2. And if we type in H here, if we find H, it'll return 3. And that's what the find function does. You can find certain characters throughout the string. But if we type in a character that isn't in the string, such as J, it should return -1, or a value such as this, some kind of garbage value, because obviously that's not a position anywhere in the string. So you could, for instance, type in Y and you'll get another strange value. So we get another strange value, and that's kind of how you can decipher whether the character was found or not. So that's basically all I kind of wanted to show you, was that each of these name objects each of these string objects, variables, have their own built-in functions that you can use, such as find, size, length, replace, and they're all down here. You can kind of stroll through them and look at all of them. Now we will be discussing how to create our own random number generator. Now all a random number generator is it's a function that returns a random number so that we can use it in our program. And the reason why I wanted to cover this is because, believe it or not, this is something that many people like to figure out how to do so that they can incorporate it into games or certain programs that require some level of randomness. Now if you're just trying to kind of figure out how to make a random number on your own, you would have to kind of create your own algorithm, and it would be quite a lengthy process. So what I recommend doing as a beginner C++ programmer is, anytime you're looking for some kind of functionality, like such as randomness, for example, like we're doing here, I recommend going to c++.com, as you can see up here, and just searching for what you're looking for. In this case, I typed in random, and I ended up with this function called rand, and you can see it here. It's called int rand void. And if you kind of just look through these documents, you can see how you can use this library and these libraries to create a random number generator. And it's really quite simple, and they spell it out for you right here, how easy it is to get your program to spit out a random number. Well, about as random as you can get anyways. All computers, there's no way to really make them completely random, but you can at least make it appear random to the user. So that's exactly what we're going to do. You can kind of mark this reference down if you want to come back and read it later. But basically, in this program, all we're going to be doing is everything that this reference page tells us to do to create our generator. So let's go back to our program, and we're first going to include the libraries that we need for our random number generator to work, and that is include standard library.h file, and then include time.h file. And you might be wondering what this time.h library is for. Well, our random number generator is going to be based off the internal clock of the machine, and it's going to incorporate that into its algorithm to come up with a random number. And you'll see what I mean here in a second. I mean, it won't be extremely clear, but that's basically how this algorithm works. Is it gets the current time down to the millisecond and throws that into a function, and basically that function is going to spit out a different number every single time because the time is changing constantly, and depending on what the actual time is, the algorithm may spit out a completely different number than the one it spit out 1 millisecond ago. So that being said, let's go ahead and create a function that's going to generate our number. We'll have it return an integer value because we want to return an integer. We'll call it generate random number. It won't take any arguments. And then down here, we're actually going to write out our function. So we'll write the same thing, generate random number. And then in here is where we will write our code. And if you go to c++.com and look at it, it's actually quite simple. You just include your libraries, and then write this small function right here, which initializes the random seed to the internal clock on the computer. And then you just simply spell out your variable with this function, with this number always being the number between 0 and then this number to be all your random values that are possible, and then plus 1, and this will return any number. For instance, right here, this iSecret variable will spit out any number randomly between 0 and 10 because they have 10 specified right here. So let me show you what I mean. So the first thing we have to do is type srand parentheses, and in these parentheses for the constructor you type time and then another constructor as null and a semicolon. And just like that, and that may seem really unintuitive at first, but that's what the c++.com reference tells us to do, so that's exactly what we're going to do for a random number generator. And on certain functionality that you might need in your program, it's not that important to understand exactly how it works. You just need to know how to use it, and that's kind of what I'm showing you right here. So this is how you would use the random number generator library with the time.h and standard library header files. So now let's go ahead and hold a we're going to hold a value. We'll just return. There's two ways to do this. You can create a value called int, and we'll just call it number, and we'll set it equal to rand, put your constructor, modulo operator, the number between 0 and 0 and then x, basically, that you want the highest number to be. We'll put 50 down, and then plus 1, semicolon. And this number, when this code runs, will be any number between 0 and 50 on a basically picked randomly. So if we return number there, and then here we just return, we call the function generate random number. When we run the program, the main will call that function, and you see process return 41 because it's calling in this return function of the main, it's calling generate random number, and when it returns the value returned from generate random number, it returned 41. But if we run it again, it'll give us a different number. This time it returned 50. But we can keep running this over and over again, and every time it will be a different number between 0 and 50. And all we have to do, if we want to change the spread, we could change this to 200, for example. It will be any number between 0 and 200. This time it was 96. So that's how you use a basic random number generator. I just kind of wanted to go over it with you so that you would know what we were doing when we make our final project.